Hello, Will. Welcome to our Tech Pod.
Oh, hi, Brad. Welcome to our Tech Pod. It's good to see you. So something a little different today. If you are just joining us, you may or may not know that we recorded a couple of episodes before we did the first episode. You've heard one of them, the Origin Stories one, but this is the one we did before that because, Brad, you have a monitor problem.
Oh man, let's not get into. They're going to hear plenty about that. Let's just let them absorb it naturally into the skin.
Yeah. So anyway, this is the episode we recorded. We didn't know what the show was called. We knew what we wanted to do, but we just sat down and we both did some research on monitors and monitor technology and refresh rates, and we talked about it for a bit. Screens, how screens work. There's a lot of good stuff in here, and we wanted to make sure we get this one out, even though it's a little raw, before the information gets too stale.
Yeah, we're worried about the because we talk about OLED and refresh rates and adaptive sync and like all kinds of screen stuff, but that stuff's changing so fast that it could get musty if we waited for much longer. So
I guess we should start the show, but it's going to end. But it's not over when it ends. Don't skip to the next podcast. We're going to
come back with 2 months worth of updates.
We have some emails. We'll let you know what happens with the questions, the cliffhangers in the episode, and we'll tell you to like us on iTunes. Okay, well let's cast a pod. All right, let's try this.
Still,
how do we start it though?
Still don't know what it's called.
I mean, maybe we just started by saying, "How do we start it?" And,
okay.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Will.
I'm Brad.
We wanted to do a tech podcast.
Yeah,
and we don't know what to call it
or how it's structured.
Yeah, I think we have an idea of how it's structured.
Okay.
But
blueprint.
Let's see. To avoid doing the lame thing where you spend the first 5 minutes talking about the podcast, the basic pitch is we want to talk about a single topic every week.
Yeah.
Kind of really dig in a way that neither of us ever get to do on our real jobs.
It feels self-indulgent in those contexts.
Yes. So this is a pilot episode. We're gonna kick it off by talking about refresh rate.
Everybody's favorite.
It's the sexiest topic.
The most invigorating, exciting topic.
Well, so
screen refresh.
We've been talking about this for ages.
Pixels.
And this has been one of those ideas that was on the back burner the whole time. It's like, what about refresh rate? It's there's G-Sync, there's all the iPad stuff, there's TVs coming out with new refresh rates soon. It's complicated and it's kind of interesting. Because the thing I didn't realize, why do we have a 60 hertz? Why is 60 hertz the default refresh rate, Brad? Do you know?
This pop quiz.
Yeah. I'm putting it. Our first segment is Brad takes the question.
It's a nice round number.
It is a good round number.
It's divisible by 15. I don't know.
It's because when we had analog TVs, when analog TVs were first being built.
Oh, is there a physics-based reason for this?
There is an electrical engineering-based reason for this.
Now I'm on board.
We couldn't build power supplies that isolated the electrical line noise that came out of the AC wall plugs from the cathode ray tubes. So rather than build a whole bunch of incredibly expensive, complicated isolating circuits and put them in the back of the CRTs that probably wouldn't have worked well anyway, to get rid of the noise that came from the wall, they just made it the same as the refresh rate of the AC power.
It's actually just a workaround?
It's because the power that comes out of our wall is 120 hertz.
Wow.
That's why
they just needed a refresh that synced with that.
That's exactly right.
That's incredible.
So
I mean, that's terrible.
Here's the next question.
Yes.
Think about PAL.
Okay.
50 hertz PAL.
Okay.
Yeah.
Different power standard.
Yeah. Same thing for Japan.
What is it? 100?
They're 100 hertz, 50 hertz.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can blank it out on the 50.
Okay.
So yeah.
Huh.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
All of this, 60 hertz. We've been hearing 60 hertz our whole life. You can't see more than 60 hertz. It doesn't matter. You can't see more than 24 hertz. It doesn't matter. Because electrical engineering in the 30s
That's incredibly impressive from a problem solving standpoint,
Right.
and also super frustrating from a modern day I want to do things standpoint.
Well, so the good news is we're getting past that now. Like we've reached a point when we shifted to LCDs, which don't have like a tube and they're all digital.
They don't draw from top to bottom.
Not that problem.
Yeah.
Like we could have made this change then, but these things take time. So 20 years later, here we are, ready to finally move beyond 60 hertz in a way that makes sense. That's all I got. That's pretty much the whole show.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us.
See you all next
Screens,
week.
they're better than they used to be. That's our professional breakdown of this.
Our Patreon.
I mean, like, I think about this all the time in a bunch of content. Like, I've got an iPad Pro in front of me that's 120 hertz.
Yeah.
And yet I have two Dell 2005 FPWs from 2005.
Really?
Those are my monitors.
Still?
Almost 15-year-old monitors that are still going.
You've probably paid more to power those now than you paid for the monitors.
Many times over.
Several
Because
times
they've got,
over.
like a fluorescent tube
like a
as a
cold
backlight,
cathode tube
probably.
or
So,
something,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure that they suck electricity like nobody's business.
Wow.
Well, they refuse to die.
That's I have one in my garage.
They just won't quit. They won't quit. I have like thousands and thousands of anyway.
Does it even have HDMI?
No.
It's DVI, right?
One DVI, one VGA. Also, it takes two resolutions: 1680 by 1050, which is native, and 1280 by 1024. Those are the only two resolutions those monitors will take. If you try to feed it anything else, like it,
Wait, they're not 1080p monitors?
No.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's terrible.
Brad,
terrible.
It's time to have an intervention.
But I've been trying to buy a monitor for years and years, and I just can't find the thing that has everything I want.
Okay, so let's talk. Oh god, so you play games, obviously,
yes,
on your personal computer. Yeah. You want a higher refresh rate monitor.
I do. I even want a higher. Just the 1080 screen would be a massive improvement for me at this point.
So
and an HDMI port.
Yeah, HDMI port seems like it would be really useful for you on a couple of different levels.
Yeah.
So okay, here's the deal. Monitors now, especially high-end PC monitors, support adaptive sync. So in the old days, back when we were talking about CRTs, what would happen is whatever you plugged into the monitor would just redraw the gun that illuminated the phosphors on the back of the glass tube, would start at the top of the screen and do a line. And it would every 1/60th of a second, it would just start at the top and do another line.
The electronic gun.
The electronic gun.
So it's a good band name.
And, oh god, yeah, it really is. In the old days, it would just look at whatever's in the frame buffer of the video card. You know, hey, here, put this on the screen bit of the video card.
Here's the next frame.
Here's the next frame, and it would draw whatever was in there. And as a result of that, if your frame rate was running faster than the 60 hertz, 60 frames a second, then it would sometimes get like halfway down and there would be a new, and the frame would switch in the video card buffer. So like it would draw the top half of one frame and the bottom half of a second frame. And you have like a big, nasty, jagged tear across. This is what we call tearing. Everybody, I assume everybody knows this, but we explain things just to be safe. It's a good podcast, I think.
Yes.
As a result of that, as a result of the monitor deciding what the refresh rate is, not the device that's actually generating the frames, you would have tearing and other problems like micro stuttering and stuff like that. Now, as of like 5 years ago, 2013, 2014, NVIDIA started this thing released a thing called G-Sync, which basically makes it work the other way. The computer says, "Hey, monitor, I got a frame for you. Are you ready?" And the monitor's like, "Yeah, I'm ready." And then the computer blasts the frame over and the monitor draws it. So it's the computer saying, "Hey, here's the number of frames we have for you. Here's the timing for them." And there's some logic on the board on the monitor that's like, "Oh, okay, we're not ready for another frame yet," or "We are ready for another frame yet," to avoid having like micro stutters and stuff like that.
It's a two-way transaction now. Instead of the computer just turning its frame hose on and spraying the monitor indiscriminately.
I don't think I ever want to hear about frame hoses spraying again, but yes, that is exactly right.
They talk to each other now instead of
it's a conversation.
Instead of the video card just saying, "Here, do this."
Yeah, it's like a podcast between the monitor and the computer. So
am I the G-Sync monitor in this situation?
You can. Yeah,
okay. I'll take that role off.
I'm the frame hose. Oh, damn. So NVIDIA came out with G-Sync shortly after AMD came out with FreeSync.
Oh, G-Sync came after FreeSync?
No.
Or, oh, wait, did I
AMD was
mishear?
after.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Switch that, reverse it.
And FreeSync is an open standard.
FreeSync is an open standard that I think ended up being mostly rolled into the VESA standard, which determines what HDMI and all of the other kind of monitor connectors work.
Okay.
So there's a VESA adaptive sync, which a lot of monitors and soon TVs are going to support as well.
So yeah, not to get ahead of ourselves, but are the features like adaptive sync that are making their way into the new HDMI spec, are those also under the VESA umbrella, or is that a different consortium?
So I think VESA,
Like, I didn't
actually look at this.
Not to derail, but I would do an entire podcast about the consortiums that define the tech standards of our
100th episode,
lives.
Brad. That's the big one. We're going to work up to that. We got to ease into this.
Help me differentiate between our IEEEs and our VESAs and our
Look, this is an ISO 9001 podcast.
Our
about the
OpenGL
IEEE.
ARBs and who are these shadowy cabal of people that are controlling our tech lives?
Look, there's groups. So
you know what? We need to find who defined the USB standard.
That was Intel, Apple,
and destroy them.
It was Intel, Apple, Sony, Sharp, and I can't remember the last. There were 5 companies that formed the USB.
That's the initial
standards
USB
org. Yeah.
Somebody in that group that decided that it should not be reversible plug.
I think it was Intel originally. I don't know who designed the physical connector. It only took them 22 years to get to the point that the connector could flip, and now nobody uses it anymore. Anyway, so yeah, VESA determined the VESA standards org, which has been the monitor people for decades. Figured out, hey, we're going to use this FreeSync stuff. It's not encumbered. Basically, the thing with NVIDIA's standard G-Sync is that you have to use one of their licensed scalers in order for it to work. Like,
in order to get away with calling it a G-Sync monitor.
Yeah, if you want G-Sync, if you want to put the G-Sync sticker on it,
you're not NVIDIA approved unless you.
And that's why those monitors. I mean, those monitors are more expensive because they're higher frame rate monitors, which is a more expensive piece of hardware, obviously
already.
Yeah, but then they also have to have the licensed hardware, the licensed scaler, and it's a really specific set of chips and like those scalers have almost a gigabyte of memory on them, which is bananas.
Okay.
Yeah. So
at a glance, I mean, I haven't crunched the numbers comprehensively, but at a glance, it's a stiff premium. The G-Sync monitors are a lot.
It's like
compared to what you would get in a FreeSync monitor of comparable specs.
Yeah. So it's been a while since I looked at the actual pricing, but it's usually at least a $200 premium.
Totally.
This seems to be my. So
when that's almost half the price of the monitor, it's hard to swallow.
And it only works with NVIDIA graphics cards.
And that.
Yes. So absolutely. I mean, it'll work as a normal monitor with any graphics card, but if you want the adaptive sync stuff, you have to use an NVIDIA card.
And now that we're getting into this world where TVs are going to start supporting that soon, that's a problem.
Well, and G-Sync,
one of many things that has stopped me from buying a new monitor and video card.
G-Sync for a really long time has been DisplayPort only, so no HDMI.
Okay.
So that's the NVIDIA side. The AMD side works on HDMI and DisplayPort. It's a little bit tiny bit less overhead. They claim it's like a 1.5% performance difference in the amount of overhead that has to happen on the rendering side for FreeSync versus G-Sync.
Okay,
it doesn't matter.
I didn't know there was a performance hit, but I mean that's not that.
It's pretty inconsequential.
Yeah.
They're other than that, more or less the same. I mean, the FreeSync works the same way. The computer is telling the monitor, "Hey, you should draw a frame." One of the interesting side effects of this is that the monitor only draws a frame redraws the screen when something changes. So if you have your wallpaper up and the desktop and nothing's changed on the desktop, it's not going to send a new frame.
It's just sitting there displaying the same frame. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's weird, right? Which doesn't make any difference at all on desktop machines, but on mobile, adaptive frame rates can actually reduce the cost, the battery use.
Oh wow, yeah.
Because you're refreshing, especially on an OLED screen, refreshing the screen costs something. Illuminating the screen obviously costs something, but there's less battery use when you're not refreshing the screen constantly.
Is adaptive sync in any mobile product yet?
Laptops.
I hadn't even thought about that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's G-Sync. You can get G-Sync and FreeSync laptops. And you're sitting in front of one actually. Also,
well, I've got this iPad Pro that's 120 hertz. I mean, that's a high refresh, but is it adaptive?
It's adaptive as well.
Is it really?
Yeah. So it only updates when the screen changes.
Okay.
So Apple's thing is called
what do they call it? ProMotion.
Well, it turns out promotion, all one word with an intercapped M, is just the word promotion.
Yeah.
So I feel like their marketing team dropped the ball on this one. They should have called it like greasy liquid or something. I don't know.
Steve Jobs would never have allowed this.
So that's a liquid retina screen. Is that right? I think they call the.
You mean in marketing terms?
The HDR ones are liquid. Liquid retina promotion. I don't know.
I'm not sure if this is an HDR or not. It might be.
I think all the iPad Pros were HDR.
Okay, this is a 10.5, so it's the previous model.
Yeah. Oh,
it's not the new fancy bezel-less one.
I think it is. But anyway, the point we're not talking about HDR today. That's a whole other hour.
Too much going on in screens.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be screens were the thing that you bought. Like I bought a 19-inch CRT at one point, and then used that for almost 10 years.
Yeah,
like that was my monitor for ages. You can't do that anymore, unfortunately. Okay, so we have G-Sync, FreeSync, the VESA Adaptive Sync, which is part of HDMI 1.2a, I think, or 4.2a. Sorry,
HDMI 2.1.
2.1.
2.1 is the one that is just now starting to trickle out, and
that's the one
that the new Xbox and PlayStation are thought to adopt.
Yeah,
or surely will adopt. Like, there's no way they won't, right?
Variable refresh rate. I would assume. I would be shocked if they don't support variable refresh rates on these new consoles, unless they do like an Xbox One S situation where they roll out like a mid season.
Oh, that's right. The current S and X have some of that spec, not the whole thing, right? They've got HDR, they've got adaptive sync.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, because there are other features of that full spec.
Right.
And I've read that like manufacturers are kind of picking and choosing which features they support.
It depends on the scaler they buy right now in a lot of cases, is my understanding. And the driver for the monitor.
So as far as what's relevant to game consoles, my understanding is it's HDR.
Yeah.
It is high refresh / adaptive refresh, because now we're getting up into 4K 120 hertz.
I mean, and we're talking about adaptive and high frame rate are related, but they are two separate things.
Right.
So high frame rate is just saying, hey, we support
it
greater than 60
this many times a second. And then the adaptive is we can sync with the. But so with these new consoles, I mean, who knows if, like, they always say, hey, it'll do. You remember the PlayStation 3 coming out?
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's a 1080p console. Like, come on.
Not so much. 2
games on that console run at 1080p or whatever. But like, theoretically, these new consoles will have enough beef to them that they might have a game. There might be some like minimal indie game that could run at 4K 120 hertz, but you need a port that could actually output that, and that's what the 2.1.
Yeah, as long as you have the port to output it. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect like 2D. It's weird to say this, but like the things that are going to run at 4K are like, 2D platformers and I don't know, like video, like Her Story, you could run at 4K, no problem.
Sure. But I mean, I can tell you from using this iPad that having a very high resolution, very high refresh screen looks good as hell. Like it sounds like just a bunch of like numbers on paper, but like in person, it's pretty worthwhile.
Well, it's something, it's funny. It's one of those things that I didn't really appreciate until I started doing VR work. And there, like the difference between high refresh rate, high frame rate, and low refresh rate, low frame rate is physical discomfort to needing a bucket.
A matter of losing your lunch.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's when you look at the frame rate situation, like there's physiological changes. Like when I was working at Maximum PC 20 years ago, we regularly had people write in and say, hey, movies run at 24 frames a second. Can the human eye see more than that? Why do I need to spend money on a monitor that has a 90 hertz refresh rate when we were talking about CRTs? And it's really apparent, especially when you watch video at 60 hertz. And I'm not talking about bad motion smooth TV where they're doing horrible things. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Something actually captured at 60.
Yeah, something that's actually captured. If you capture, if you have an iPhone and you're capturing video at 60 frames a second on your iPhone, you watch it at 60 frames a second, it looks crisper and more real. There's less blurring, and it's a good experience for the right type of content.
Start to get that window effect, I think they call it.
What's the window effect?
It's just like the idea that your TV is a window on something real that is happening and not something artificial that was recorded.
That's exactly
it. Starts to fool your brain into...
It looks more...
But ironically, we're so used to artificial low frame rates that when you first see that stuff, it looks fake because your brain doesn't think it should be that smooth.
Did you go... Okay, so there's a couple of frame rates that are really important here. There's 24 hertz, which is what we shoot film at.
Right.
There's 30 frames a second, which is what most TV is recorded at.
Not to go off on a tangent, and I don't know exactly how this works, but I think wasn't the 24 frames per second standard also arrived at because of a technical limitation? I think it had something to do with like syncing up with the audio on the film reel or something along those lines.
I have no idea. I have heard those stories.
Authoritative podcast
yes,
here.
We are.
I think it's a similar thing of like that was the number they arrived at because it was what they could do with all the other stuff they were working.
I mean, back in the old days, they were actually cranking a thing by hand. Right. So maybe that's just the metronome that they had on set on the first day was a 24. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that next week.
The history of tech is a history of good enough. I find,
yeah,
in a lot of cases, it's just like what would work at all.
Well, or like simple, like a lot of times you're presented with a problem and you're like, oh, okay, here's the right way to solve this problem is to jump through all these hoops and do a bunch of problem, and then somebody will be like, we can actually if we just shave off this corner 3 microns, it's just going to fit in, it'll be fine. And then
what could go wrong 80 years from now?
Yeah, it's going to be okay, and nobody's going to be using this stuff 80 years from now. Okay, so 24 hertz, 30 hertz, 60 hertz, and now increasing 120 hertz and beyond.
What do you know about 59.94?
So
should I even bring that up?
So there's 29.97 and 59.94.
Yeah.
Those have to do with TV production, and I don't know why those are the real resolutions.
Yeah. Because you see those on video capture devices, or if you know people who do professional video production, they are well acquainted with those frame rates, and I don't know what the deal is.
Most of your cameras, it probably just leaves one frame every second for like
some kind of metadata, maybe some kind of
vertical blanking or something.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Right in.
I'll believe that.
Right in.
Yeah.
Add us on Twitter because we didn't set up an email address before we started the podcast.
Tell us, the experts.
Yes.
How that works.
We're curious.
Yeah.
Vinny, when you're listening to this, so we have those refresh rates. Why do you think we ended up with 120 hertz for things like the ProMotion display?
I would assume because it's double 60, but this sounds like a trick question.
It's the least common denominator for 24 and 60.
Oh, wow. Sure. Okay.
So you remember the old 3-2 pull down thing, right?
Yes. That's how you get rid of the judder.
That's kind of, but sometimes it adds judder. It's not a perfect solution for turning 24 frame per second content into 60 frame per second content, because it means that I think they use they double 3 frames and then every third frame they double 2 and not the third.
Is that what it is?
How it works?
Okay.
Something like that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The upshot is we don't have to do that anymore with 120 hertz displays because you multiply 24 by
60 is not cleanly divisible by 24.
Exactly. That's the problem.
But 120 is.
Yes. Exactly. So we have 120 hertz displays are going to become common. Like I think our TVs probably next year models, and if not 2020 models, 2021 models. For sure.
So I don't know when you want to talk. I don't want to derail this about.
I have a very well thought out plan, Brad. We're not just sitting in your living room on Saturday morning when I have the first hangover of the last 6 years.
Perfect
recording
time.
A podcast.
Perfect time to start throwing numbers and standards around. Well, it seems like a ton is changing with TVs right now, and again, for the next couple years as these standards catch up. But like this year's models, and I think some of last year's models of like OLED TVs are finally hitting 120 hertz panels, but not ports capable of carrying that signal. So like the TVs are getting out there that can do 4K 120, but like you couldn't plug like an Xbox or whatever into them and do that. So you could only do it through the built-in streaming apps.
And they're just using the 120 hertz aside from the built-in streaming apps to not have to do 3-2 pull down when you're watching a movie, right? Yes.
But to me, like having a screen that can do that and not being able to plug any physical devices into it and actually send that signal is borderline useless. So that's one of many reasons that everybody I know has been saying like, dude, just shut up and pony up for an OLED. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like TVs are going to be so much better next year and the year after.
Well, so you and I both have the same TV in different sizes.
Yeah.
The one that we bought in like 2010 probably or 2011.
I think mine's from 2012, but we both got rocking the old Panasonic plasmas.
Last gen Panasonic, like I have the second to last Panasonic plasma.
Yeah, mine was somewhere around that too.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Like the panels are really capable, and part of that is because manufacturing, like everybody just builds the panels that go into phones because they're a massive business. There's billions of those things sold all the time. And the difference between a phone panel and a TV panel is just how big you cut the sheet in a lot of cases. but refresh rates.
Yes.
So yeah, TVs are coming. The VESA standard, the adaptive refresh VESA standard gives both a way to convert, send high frame rate, high refresh rate, and to only render the frames that are necessary. Right. So like the thing that was weird in the days before adaptive frame rate was, you know, the monitors, your CRT monitor is drawing 60 frames a second because the phosphorus fade and it has to keep going. With LCDs and OLEDs, we don't need to do that anymore, but we kept doing it anyway because, you know, we were a default VGA, a default CRT world, and now we're finally starting to move beyond that. So now it only renders new frames. It only sends the new frames when there's something changed on the screen, and everything's better. It's there's no downside to that.
Almost everything is better. There's one thing.
Okay, what you got?
That is probably the most esoteric topic I'm aware of in this vein.
Boy. Okay.
That I've just kind of recently been reading up on, so I don't have a super clear picture on it. But are you familiar with the idea of high persistence versus low persistence displays?
Oh,
have you ever seen how, like, our plasmas? Have you ever seen how they're referred to as 600 hertz screens?
Yeah.
From my understanding, and again, I've only just started reading about this stuff. These screens, like, independent of the frame rate that is being sent or the frames data that is being sent to them, they refresh their image, and I think on plasmas they use phosphors, right?
Yeah, right. It's like a glowy gas.
They refresh that image 600 times a second,
even though you're only getting so yeah, that makes sense.
And the net effect of that, and this is something that I noticed on this plasma for years and loved, but couldn't put a name to until I just recently started digging into it. Which is that, especially like playing high frame rate games on these plasmas, if you like pan the camera around, like I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Anything with a lot of fast motion stays like remarkably sharp and clear.
Yeah,
on these screens.
Yeah, and
my understanding is it's because they are refreshing that, even though it's like, say, only 60 frames a second, each one of those frames is getting reprojected onto the screen, or whatever the term is, 10 times per frame.
That's amazing.
So that's why they stay so clear. But like OLEDs and LCDs are not that. They are, I think they draw much fewer times per second. So that's why you get a lot of motion blur on those.
That's why you can. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason that the G-Sync stuff and the FreeSync stuff,
I'm sure that helps.
A big deal.
Yeah. And I've seen there were at CES this year. I know I'm just kind of like rambling about a bunch of stuff, but I saw there are some monitors announced at CES this year that also combine some like backlight strobing techniques to try to further reduce the motion blur.
Well, so I was going to say that's one of the other things that they can do is they can strobe backlight. One of the things that when you're building a G-Sync or presumably a FreeSync panel too, is you have to look at the characteristics of the panel, and then they figure out ways to minimize ghosting and you know, unintended blur. The other thing is that like in video game world, all games have motion blur now, which blows. But they do that to kind of smooth over that stuff on the panels, I think.
Right.
So it's a reaction to, if it's going to be there, we might as well control it, I guess, rather than just let your shitty monitor render their game the way that it's going to render it.
Yeah. Like the net effect of all this stuff is that I have obsessively painted myself into this corner where there are things I love about this plasma that don't exist anymore. There are features that are coming that aren't out yet, and I just can never buy anything.
Well, so you need to get a G-Sync. You need to get a adaptive sync monitor.
A something sync, not necessarily. Well, now we're at this point where NVIDIA is like grudgingly supporting some FreeSync, but they're very they're a little dismissive about it. They're like, well, here's a dozen FreeSync monitors that might work. Like, we haven't tested them, but here you go.
So part of the difference between G-Sync and FreeSync is that they control the scaler, and that scaler is then tuned to the panel in the display, so they don't have to do that stuff on their side.
Okay,
like they don't have to be like, oh, this is an Acer 2965 whatever. These are the characteristics. This is my understanding.
The scaler in the monitor just takes the data and runs.
Yeah, because the scaler knows what the monitor can do.
Yeah.
So G-Sync doesn't have to know what the monitor can do. So what they're doing is they're going through and qualifying panels that they want to, presumably from trusted partners. I don't know. It's been interesting because like some companies just don't make G-Sync monitors. Like LG hasn't made G-Sync monitors, and they make all those dope super widescreen curved dealies that are very pretty. So it's exciting because people who want like a big wide ass monitor can now get adaptive sync on an NVIDIA card. I think now is a fine time to buy a monitor, a PC monitor.
Okay.
There's like all sorts of weird sizes. You can get like a 65-inch G-Sync monitor now that looks essentially like a TV. They're kind of expensive, it turns out. But like,
so what distance are people sitting away from their monitors at that point? Like I see people talking about getting like 32-inch or more or bigger monitors
Look, man.
and trying to envision what kind of desk setup they have.
So I had for years one of those 30-inch Dell panels.
Okay.
And
how close did you sit? And did you have to
4 feet probably?
Did you? I mean, as soon as I have to physically pivot my head back and forth to see the whole screen,
my eyes move inside my head.
I guess.
You know, this is my vision's bad, so I sit a little closer, right? I don't know. I'm using a 27 or 28 inch 4K 60 panel that's awesome, and it's probably 3.5 feet back from my chair.
Okay.
I think the sweet spot right now, especially if you want adaptive sync, are those 1440p IPS. So they're 2560 by 1440.
Right. Which is what is that? QHD, I think is what they call it.
QVGA, WQHD or something.
Yeah.
You can get good refresh rates, so you can get up to like 165 hertz if you. I'm air quoting here. Overclock the monitor. It's a terrible phrase. I
see people talking about that. And
but it's nice. I mean, if you're playing a game and you want the high frame rate and your computer can drive, this is all obviously contingent on the machine that you hook up to the monitor being able to actually push the frames out.
I gave up all forms of overclocking years ago. It just never is worth the hassle to me at this point.
It's the only thing I overclock is memory.
Okay.
Because the memory bandwidth, it turns out, is a big bottleneck. And anyway, it doesn't matter.
It's another topic to file away for later.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. Memory. Good God, what's happening with memory
and just overclocking?
When you have there's nothing huge coming unless you're in the market for a 4K greater than 60 hertz G-Sync or FreeSync or VESA adaptive sync.
Okay.
IPS panel. You can get 4K greater than 60 in TN panels, but I can't. That's a bridge too far for me.
I feel like nobody I know or nobody I even read online earnestly recommends a TN panel. It seems like at best a lot of people put up with them.
If you need if my dad was like, "Hey, I want a monitor," I would say, "Dad, how much do you want to spend?" And he'd tell me $150, and I'd be like, "Here's your boy."
Sure. But they do seem sort of universally recognized as like the.
If you do anything that requires accurate colors, they're bad. Right. That's the problem. And like the off-axis viewing is not like there's a whole host of problems with them.
Is IPS still the thing? Because there's also VA and like variations on VA, and like there might be even. I guess that's it. Those are kind of the three right now, right?
I mean, the right now the business is OLED, right? If you want to get the big boy,
well, that's not really
OLED, but you can't really get those in monitors yet. Yeah. So IPS is what I get because I do video and photo stuff, and I want good color reproduction. If you're playing games 1440p, G-Sync or FreeSync, depending on your flavor of video card, and 144 hertz is great. Even 120 hertz is great. If you're not playing games, maybe don't bother, because Windows especially is kind of janky with high frame rate and HDR and all.
Really,
it has problems. Windows
with high frame rate? No kidding.
I don't think it uses it for a whole lot. Like I don't think it'll render. I mean, I guess it'll render the monitor refresh rate. But
I have heard that Windows is still pretty bad about scaling up to 4K.
Windows
still
challenging. I would describe it as long as you're running 4K, like as long as everything runs at the same scale, like games, Windows, your video display, everything, it's no problem. Their solution is not as good as Apple's is for scaling stuff up.
Okay.
Because Apple's super smart about, like, if you run a 4K video on a Retina display, it displays the native pixels instead of trying to quad double them, and Windows is bad at that stuff, depending on the application you use.
Doesn't Apple use like a lot of vector type stuff in their UI elements as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Lets it scale easily.
And Windows does that too. Okay. And also, like Apple, you have to provide, if you provide raster images, you have to provide them in like a bazillion different DPIs so that you get the right number of pixels and the right density. TVs, on the other hand, way more complicated.
Yes, and still maturing. Let's say still not quite where that seems like they're going to end up in another couple of years.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think I mean, the big thing is the connector. Getting the full HDMI 2.1. 2.1a, I think.
That might be right. So there was one other feature I was going to mention.
Yeah.
There. So Actually, there's more than like, I think there's like 5 or 6 new features total with that spec, but there's like 3 that are going to matter to game consoles if that's what people care about.
Okay.
It is the 4K 120 hertz. It is the adaptive sync.
Yes.
And there's one other one that I forget the like consortium name for, but it's something along the lines of like automatic low latency mode. I think that's what it is. ALL.
Oh, so you don't have to say this input is your game console and this input is your movie.
Oh my actually, God. Like I don't see anybody talking about it, and it's largely probably because I don't think the products are really out there yet. But like, it seems like a godsend because what it is it's exactly what you said. Like, no more mucking around in the TV menu to see like, okay, is this the game mode? Do I need to turn off the denoising filter? Like, how do I get my latency down as low as possible to play video games on this? And to be fair, it's a big ask because it's going to require every device in your entire chain to support that.
So that means like, you're going to have to replace your receiver,
like game console, receiver if you're going through one, to TV or anything else that is in that chain. But once you have all that in place, the source device can just tell the whole chain, like automatically drop to whatever the lowest latency thing is. No user intervention required. Just like this is how to play games.
That's fabulous.
At the lowest possible latency that this whole chain of devices supports.
Oh, so that's super good.
It sounds great because like that stuff is terrible. Like I took my Switch and dock to E3 this year.
Oh, you tried to play on a hotel TV.
I hooked it up and like the ports were exposed. I was all excited. I was like, okay, it was worth it. Yeah. Hauling all this crap with me. I'm going to hook this up and play a Switch in the hotel room. Worst input lag I've ever experienced on a screen in my life. And there were no settings. I dug around everywhere. There were no settings for turning on and off filters and post-processing and all that stuff. It was like literally like half a second after I would press the button, Mario would jump. Oh. And I was just like, okay, like I was technically able to hook this up and play it, but it's so worthless that I'm not going to bother.
So I carry, my laptop has a GeForce 1060 in it. So it's like, it's a decent laptop for games. And I'm in hotels a lot and I plug it in and it's like 30% success rate. Either you can't get to the HDMI ports from the remote and I have to figure out how to get the service menu and all that stuff open, which is just, it's not worth getting into. Or the input lag is just atrocious because a lot of those, it seems like the electronics for the TV may be in orbit someplace or something. They're just really, really bad.
Sure.
That's a really cool feature. I hadn't heard anything about that.
Yeah, I didn't know about it either until I basically did a gut check recently where I was like, okay, am I insane for not wanting to upgrade my TV yet? Because everybody I know has a much better TV than me. And I basically was like, all right, I'm going to read about everything these new consoles are probably going to have and whether I really think that's worth waiting for. And once I saw that full list, I was like, okay, we're 18 months or less out from those.
I mean, I think these will hit next year, at least at the high end.
That seems to be, yeah.
I was going to say, like, I think if you bought an OLED 2 years ago when they first started getting to non-stratospheric prices, when you could get like a decent TV for $2,500 or $2,000, which is a lot of money for a TV, but not, TV pricing gets real weird when you get to the high end.
Yeah.
I think that was okay, but I think now when you're literally 6 months from new hardware announced, I think now
we're in the window where it's like probably hold out. But yeah, like I should probably reiterate, like anybody that bought a new 4K TV in the last couple of years is like totally fine, right? Like,
yeah. I mean,
like 4K 60 on those machines is still going to be pretty good. Like it's not.
Yeah, I think like 4K 60 is already an improvement over 1080p 60. And yeah, if we I think the adaptive frame rate stuff, like honestly, if you're coming right down to it, the thing that matters most on these 4K TVs is having HDR support. Like that's the thing that you look at and you're like, holy shit, this TV is incredible.
That's the thing that pops off the screen.
Yeah. And it looks, like the first time I saw it, I was like, Jesus, I went to Gary's house, I think, and I was like, Jesus, Gary, do you have it still in the showroom mode? Where they have it set up to be completely blown out and as bright as possible so that it stands out next to all the other TVs. And he's like, no, it's right. And he showed me, I was like, oh man, this is amazing. It's always breathtaking, especially on the OLEDs where the blacks are so good. But even on a good LCD with adaptive backlight,
1,000,000-to-1 contrast ratio.
Oh, it's like a Dolby Cinema in your house. So I think we hit the high point. Oh, we got to talk about motion smoothing.
Oh God!
Look,
do we have any Hollywood directors on the line who can back us up on this? I know there's an effort.
They're right.
Afoot.
They're right.
I know they are.
They're absolutely
It's terrible.
Right. It's bad. So motion smoothing is the thing where it takes a 30 frame a second signal and essentially frame doubles it and does, I assume, a little bit of math in between and like splits the difference between each frame, the preceding frame and the next frame, so that it can take 30 frames a second and make it 60 frames a second with a little tiny bit more kind of fake information.
Right. And it kind of works, but it looks just unnatural enough that it's just like disorienting.
So it makes everything look like TV sports kind of, or like soap operas.
Yeah.
When it first started coming out, we called it the soap opera effect untested. And I don't know if that was I guess everybody called it that, but it makes everything look like it's shot on bad cameras at a really weird frame rate.
And the other thing I've noticed, I guess I'm sure this varies between TVs that have different processing algorithms and stuff, but some TVs seem very inconsistent at it. Like they're better at smoothing, let's say, fine motion than broad, like gross motion, or vice versa. Like it'll be very smooth, and then somebody moves a certain way, and then you can see that it can't keep up, and then it works again. Like it's not a worthwhile technology.
Like if you're watching tennis, it looks great because the only thing that's moving are like the two little people in the ball.
Right.
And if you're watching, I don't know, hockey, maybe less good.
Yeah.
Because the camera's moving and anyway. Turn off motion smoothing.
Yes.
That's the TLDR. And the reason this looks better, the reason adaptive frame rate, high frame rate stuff looks better is because you're actually getting data.
Yeah.
It's not having to make it up as it goes. So you're seeing something that is a closer analog to what our eyes detect. And it seems like from reading about the how your brain interacts with vision, that any idea of we are unsure of what the upper limit on humans' ability to detect frame rate is. Because it's not something that really exists in the real world. It seems like there's probably a spectrum across which all humanity can be mapped. Some people are. This became really apparent when we were doing early VR demos. Some people are super sensitive to frame rate. Some people have absolutely no sensitivity at all to frame rate. Like one of my developers gets motion sick the moment he has two frame sags. He can feel it. I can play a Gear VR in the back of a moving car and I'm fine.
You have an iron stomach.
Yeah. It's been interesting to see. And in that case, some of the frame doubling stuff does work. Like Sony does frame doubling on some of the PSVR games, and that seems to work for most people in my experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like when people tell you that nothing more than 24 hertz or 30 hertz or 60 hertz or whatever don't matter, it's really untrue. And that scales all the way up to the new Valve headset, the Index.
640K is enough for anybody.
Oh, Jesus.
That's the quote, right?
Yeah, with 640 kilobytes of RAM. That's it.
I don't know how much longer you want to go, but I've got a couple of questions that I would throw out. Okay, so buy a monitor now.
Yeah.
Maybe don't buy a TV just yet.
I'd see what happens in January at CES for the new TVs.
Kind of thinking about like
if your TV's not working, go buy a TV.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, replace the TV. Maybe buy a cheapo.
I really would like to buy new monitors. Like just these things, lack of inputs, lack of video modes. Like it is very constricting. I streamed a PS4 game a few days ago, and I had to play the game in the OBS capture window. That's how bad that's how limited those monitors are. Anyway,
Brad, it's time.
Looking at screens in the mobile space, why do you think we aren't seeing higher pixel density displays on PC monitors right now?
Because Windows is bad at scaling.
Is that really just what it is?
I think that's it. Okay. Yeah. Like you'll notice it's one of those things that like one of the problems I have is that games, applications that don't use the right graphics model for Windows, like the right toolkit APIs for drawing the windows, like Steam, for example, sometimes gets stuck in not pixel doubled mode.
Okay.
I have no idea why. Sometimes you'll have like the window, like if you switch from a game which runs at 1:1 back to Windows, which runs basically pixel doubled, so each pixel becomes 4 pixels on the 4K screen, or I use it anyway. It doesn't matter. Then sometimes the windows will get resized badly, and they'll get stuck in the like you'll have like either the image of the window is super small inside a much bigger frame, and like the only way you can fix it is by closing and opening the application again. So I think that's probably it. Also, it doesn't matter because usually at the distance you're sitting.
But what if it does matter? I'll just
hit me.
Just to clarify, like here's basically what I'm looking for. Like I don't have a ton of desk space, and I generally like to run with 2 identical monitors, just because it's easier to drag stuff back and forth if it's already the right size.
Do you like having the second monitor for like just so you have a second,
just so I can look at things back? You know, like I've been mucking around in FreeBSD a lot lately, so like having some kind of like a tutorial up on one monitor and a console window on the other, like stuff like that. It's just much easier to look back and forth.
Yeah.
Point being, like I would say, let's say like 24 inch is probably the upper limit of what I would like to have. But you're seeing like very few like 1440p screens at that size, like next to no screens at higher resolutions than that. But you look at like phones and tablets are higher resolution than that at like what, a third or a fifth of the size.
Less
So,
than
like,
that even.
So
Sometimes, yeah.
basically, I guess what you're saying is it sounds like it's market forces that are stopping that kind of fidelity from getting into the PC space.
24 inches is the budget.
It's just nobody is asking for what I'm asking for. So it's not. What I mean is there's no manufacturing reason that they couldn't be making that stuff.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Okay.
They could cut the panels, whatever.
Right.
They
That's
want.
what I thought. I was like, these screens obviously exist in mobile. Why is this not happening? But it's just because nobody but me wants it.
So they make the rolls of panels in and you can find, if you search YouTube, you can see videos of panels getting cut.
Like literally rolls? Like
Rolls.
They roll up?
It's like it looks like a giant roll of cloth.
Huh.
And then they take that and they stick it on the for an LCD, they stick it on the board, which drives it and provides the LED backlights now too. So the thing that determines where the panels go is what the pitch, the pixels per inch of the rolls are.
Right.
So like the screen ones are higher. They're like 300 and 350 pixels per inch in some cases now. The ones that are for TVs and monitors are usually lower pixels per inch.
Okay. The one thing I have noticed that kind of contradicts what I was just saying is that it looks like actual 4K displays are starting to trickle into the smaller screen
Probably
category.
Yeah.
Like you're starting to see 22, 24 inch 4K displays.
Probably. My guess is that those are phone screen dot pitches.
Okay, so it's just because those are already getting made. So why not make monitors out of them?
Yeah. So the problem, it's very much a case of, hey, this stuff costs this much per square inch versus this much per square inch, and we can get a better resolution here, and the resolution will help us sell more monitors.
How long? I mean, so like 1080p has been the standard in PC monitor displays for
it's the minimum, yeah.
Close to a decade now?
Probably. Yeah.
How long do you think before everything...
Well, MacBook Airs were always lower than 1080p, weren't they?
I guess so.
Even the 13-inch was like a
HD broadcast is 1080.
Yeah.
Like video game streaming is kind of geared toward 20. That's sort of the baseline resolution.
It's because that's what the TVs show.
How long do you think before in the PC space everything is 4K in that same way? And by that I mean like even most every budget monitor you see is 4K. Like games comfortably are all running at 4K on budget GPUs. Like, are we another 5 years from that?
I'd say about 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. It usually takes about 10 years for the high end to become the baseline. So if you think about HDMI, 1080p monitors started like that Dell 2405, the 1080p one was basically the first kind of mainstream. It was a $500 monitor at the time, and now those are, they give them away with cereal boxes.
You can get like that. That just shines a light on how stupid it is that I don't have a new monitor, because you can get 1080p monitors for like $75.
Yeah,
now.
they're really it costs more to like go to the store than it does to get the monitor.
Yeah.
But so the thing though, the problem is that like, for a lot of applications, 4K is thin. Like the performance is bad. Like I have the fastest consumer video card you can buy, and there's games that I can't play at 4K.
What is that, a 2080 Ti?
2080 Ti. Okay. And like there's stuff that doesn't play at 4K.
Huh.
I mean, or it doesn't, like I want a decent 60-ish frames a second, and if it sags to 30, like the console manufacturers are happy to do on like high-end single player games, that's fine, and I get that, but I want faster frame rate on the PC.
Yeah.
So I'll run it at 1440p instead of, it seems like 1440p. The answer is, I think 1440p is the standard for the foreseeable future.
Okay. I guess that question is pretty premature, because wasn't the 1080 the first card that was really promoted by Nvidia as, hey, you can run games at 4K now?
Yeah, pretty much.
I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. So like if we're only a generation out from the first 4K, realistic 4K card, then I guess it's going to be another few years before everybody's doing 4K everything, right?
We got to talk about machine learning soon. Like there's cool stuff around all of the things that you can do. So yeah, I guess they don't do it in console games, but in PC games, a lot of times now you can modify the internal resolution that the game's rendered at, and then get scaled up, probably on the game end
or down.
Yeah. depending. And the benefit of running at higher resolutions, you're essentially super sampling. You're getting some really, really good AA anti-aliasing. At the lower resolution, you can run at your monitor's native resolution, but with the internal resolution of whatever your video card can handle.
Right. Like I tried to, when NVIDIA put out that new version of the Quake 2 ray traced mod, I tried to run that on a 1080 and had to drop the internal resolution to something like 800 by 600 to get a playable frame rate.
That seems right. Yeah. I mean, I think I ran that. I think it runs even on the 2080 Ti at like, 10. I guess it runs at 1080p, but yeah, it doesn't run faster than 1080, higher than 1080p.
Ray tracing is probably a whole separate episode.
Ray tracing. I definitely want to talk about ray tracing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
just buy a monitor. Stop being picky and just buy a monitor is what you're saying.
I'm going to give you something new to obsess over. You're going to like this.
Oh boy.
You need to get a monitor stand. You need to get some arms.
Oh, I've got that.
Oh, you have it?
I've got that taken care of. Yeah.
Damn.
I've got one of the. I think it's an Echo Gear.
Yeah. It's a dual arm.
2-arm.
Oh, that's so good.
Is that hydraulic? I don't know.
Yeah, mine has springs.
Okay. That thing was life changing.
Are you a side to side or top and bottom?
Side to side.
Oh, see,
but they move freely enough that you can totally be, if you want to like play Stock Trader for half an hour, you can like put them on top of each other.
Can you rotate them?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
You could do portrait or window or whatever. But I will say the number one thing about putting the monitors on arms, putting a beverage underneath them.
Yeah.
Freeing up desk space under your monitor to put a plate of food or a beverage.
Look, I can scooch my keyboard back and put my HOTAS on the screen on the desk.
Like when you reclaim the space under your monitor, you're reclaiming your life.
It's very good.
It's a big deal.
I'm going to suggest something else.
Okay.
I think you should get a bigger monitor. I think you should get a much higher resolution monitor. So if you you're going to go from not 1080p on 2 monitors times 2 to 1080p times 4 if you get a 4K monitor.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you can get like DisplayMon or something like that lets you like segment out the windows. Now the only problem is if you're streaming or something like that and you want to have like chat and all that stuff open on the side, then that becomes a problem. You're going to want a second monitor for that.
Sure. Well, I'm definitely getting 2 monitors. It's too much a part of my workflow at this point. When I'm working at home, it's like email on the side monitor with whatever I'm doing on the main and stuff like that. Like it's just 2 monitors is what I'm used to.
You're a double monitor man.
I'm thinking I would probably get like a 1440p 24 inch is probably kind of the best compromise.
I want to see this desk in a minute.
Size
I think you can go 27.
Maybe.
I think it's time.
Maybe.
Just live a little, Brad.
All right.
Like think of how good that game's going to look when you're not playing Dota. How good it's going to be to have just like your entire field of view filled with those tiny people.
You know what they say: go big monitor or go home monitor.
That's what I always say.
That's the Okay, last question.
Yeah, hit me.
God, what was it? So the 120 hertz screen on the iPad.
Yeah.
Like we didn't even talk about it much. It's fantastic. Like,
it's gorgeous.
It is really, really like I couldn't go back.
That's the first place that I had that window effect that you were talking about.
Yeah. Like when you hear about it, you're like, okay, fine, whatever. I'm sure it looks a little bit better. But then in person, like the motion is incredibly it's buttery smooth.
It's really good.
So my question is, why is that not in phones? When is that coming to phones?
It's going to come to phones.
What are the technical limitations, or why has that not happened yet? I know, was it Razer?
Razer has.
I think it's Razer. I think it's Razer that put out that 120 hertz phone.
Don't buy that phone.
No, I absolutely would not.
Yeah, no.
But I'm not going to buy a phone made by mouse people. But
I think we'll see that in. So the way Apple works is the way this works usually is that Apple rolls something out and then the rest of the industry chases them for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And
Apple hasn't done it yet, so nobody else is really.
Yeah. So if they want to keep that as a feature of the iPad, they will. I don't think there's any reason you couldn't move that onto the phones.
Okay.
Because they're using the same chips.
Yeah.
Like the capabilities there on the CPU.
It's just
and
a smaller
video card
screen
size.
cut from the same cloth, right?
There may be. I'm sure it could be a battery math problem.
That's my question. Like, does it take like maybe more horsepower, which is going to eat into the battery more, and maybe that's why they don't want to do it, or I don't know.
Well, so the high-end iPhones now are OLEDs, right?
Yes, that's right. And these, to be fair,
that's an IPS.
They're LCDs still on the iPads.
Yeah, so it may be that the OLEDs can't do the adaptive refresh rate at this point.
Okay.
Although Apple's big enough that they can tell the OLED manufacturers figure this out.
Right. Also, the newest OLED TVs, like I said, are 120 hertz.
That's true.
So that tech exists.
My initial guess is why they haven't rolled it out yet is battery life.
Okay.
But it seems like because the adaptive frame rate isn't redrawing screens, notably on the iPad, like you don't even have to do anything to optimize for that now. It just works.
Would you bet money that there is a prototype phone inside Apple somewhere running at 120 hertz?
Oh, 100%.
They're totally doing that, right?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that they're waiting until they need a big feature. Like you know how they like to, every time they release new hardware, they like it to have at least one or two big features. Yeah. My guess is that is a future big feature for the phone.
It's significant. I really want a 120 hertz phone.
You can see
getting used to this iPad.
I can imagine Phil standing up on the stage saying, "Look, we had this on the iPad. We wanted to bring it to the iPhone. Also, the next version of Mac OS is called Dope.
Only we had the courage to double the frame rate on our phone.
Look, we're not even going to double it. We're going to triple it. It's 180 hertz. I'm just deciding this right now. Johnny Ive is out. Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
I can do whatever I want. Apple. Yeah, that's my guess.
Yeah, phones seem a little stagnant right now, so that seems like a no-brainer to me at some point for that to happen.
My bet is that it's a math problem in that under certain use cases it's going to increase load, decrease battery life.
Yeah,
and certain use cases it'll increase battery life, and they're figuring out like they're playing the min-maxing battery life game, and we'll decide when they get there.
And again, I know, like if you haven't seen it in person, it sounds like you're just splitting hairs. You know, like how much better could it be?
It's
and like,
super good.
And to be fair, like what's out there on phones now is fine. If you haven't seen it, it doesn't make a difference. Like what you have is totally fine.
Yeah,
until you see it side by side.
Well, I mean, it's a combination of HDR on the iPad, especially like HDR plus the high frame rate makes like if you're watching Thor Ragnarok or something and like the colors are so bright, it's amazing. Yeah.
All right. Last question, or you want to go?
No, we can go. I could look. We got time.
This is the danger of bringing me on. I can just keep asking questions.
I have 26 hours of space left on this SD card.
Okay. Let me get my list of questions out here.
Extra Life 2019 starts now.
What do you think about non-rectangular screens?
Like notches and
stuff? I hate the notch.
Really?
I'm weirded out by rounded corners on screens.
You have an iPhone 10?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
I've got an 8.
You couldn't take the notch.
I've got the old man phone. I've got this is a proper ass 16:9 rectangular screen.
I like the notch.
I don't like the notch.
I'm kind of used to it.
I'm sure I would get used to it too, but I am just being curmudgeonly about this.
You know what I like about the notch?
What's that?
Is that like they use it to frame the business.
No, I could see like having all your little UI elements up in the notch in the crannies
in the horns
up there is interesting, I guess, but like
I think the notch is a short-term solve.
Yeah, totally. Like the second they figure out how to get rid of that, they're going to get rid of that, right?
I mean, there's already some Android phones that have just like a circle.
Yeah, but I've seen I
think that's worse.
Really wonky solutions in that space. Like, have you seen there's a couple that have a motorized camera that rises out of the phone to take a picture?
That's bad. That's a bad idea.
It's going to break in 2 months.
Yeah. Like if it was a physical slider that you could pop up. That actually, the physical slider is kind of appealing because if you could turn on the phone as fast as just flipping a thing up, that would be nice.
Yeah,
I'd be okay with that.
I don't know if you saw, and this is not even barely about screens, but the rumor about maybe the next iPhone or the next iPhone is they're bringing back Touch ID because they found a way to make the entire screen the thumbprint sensor.
They had a patent for that years ago.
Oh, is that happening? Okay.
And the assumption when the prototypes of the iPhone 10 leaked was that was the thing.
So I have to assume they are working to try to figure out how to put like the front-facing camera underneath the screen and all that stuff.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
I hate the notch, man.
It really. I thought it was going to make me crazy, and I didn't buy the phone at launch. And then I saw my wife's phone. I was like, oh, okay, well, here we go.
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
Yeah.
I think here's the thing I found is that if the ratio of notch to not notch is right, it's less offensive. Like some of the manufacturers make like a really squatty tall notch that just feels like a mistake. I don't know.
Okay.
Like
I guess I get what you're saying.
It's a personal preference.
Yeah.
Don't ask me about my notch.
Okay.
I'm very uncomfortable talking about my notch.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's fair. All right, I'll stop.
We got any more?
No, is that it?
You're tapped?
Screens.
There's
a lot going on
rates. Who knew?
Yeah. After years of stagnation, it seems like there's a whole lot happening in every
shit is happening
category of screen right now.
It's the really interesting thing to me about screens right now is that TV space where you're looking at TVs that are more capable than the interfaces allow, and like your best experience is using the onboard apps, which
Totally.
finally aren't shitty.
I'm looking at these TVs coming out going crazy because I want an OLED, and these things do the refresh rate, but when you get a new console next year and hook them up, they're not going to...
Bupkis.
Yeah, like that.
Your best option is going to be to connect to the console remotely using the app from the TV.
Ugh.
Oh, it's a bad idea. Streaming games. Nobody's going to ever go for streaming games. That's another topic.
Of course, then you know what's going to happen is the consoles are going to come out next year, and the new TVs will be out that do all that stuff, and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, but what do you think next year's TVs are?
No, don't do that. This is your mistake. Once you see something that's close enough, boom, jump. Just throw that credit card down as fast as you can.
There it is. There it is again. Good enough.
Yeah, good enough.
Okay,
good enough. Look, your TV has been good enough for a long time.
That's true.
But as soon as the next good enough is here,
yeah. As soon as it's no longer good enough.
Yeah, jump.
Yeah. Okay.
OLED HDR though.
Yeah.
It's real pretty.
So I hear.
If you have questions about adaptive refresh rate, maybe ask us on Twitter. I don't know.
Sure.
Why not? I'm Will Smith.
Yeah, I'm
on Twitter.
I'm Brad Shoemaker.
We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Bye. So we're back. It's the present again.
Yeah.
Brad, how's your new monitor?
I'm not quite there yet, but hey, guess what? I'm gonna buy. I've taken an important life step. I've decided to buy new monitors.
Oh, thank goodness. What are you going to get?
I think the one thing that changed since we recorded that episode is I was at a family member's house and they had a couple of 27-inch monitors and I sat down and looked at them and I was like, oh, this isn't so big.
Yeah. No, you can always use more space.
I had the idiotic idea that it was going to overcrowd my desk, but they're really not that bad. So,
the next step is to go from 2 27-inch monitors to 3 27-inch monitors and then have surround vision.
Some people would argue you should just get one gigantic monitor that's like 42 inches.
I have a friend who's argued that for years, and the dot pitch on the giant 42-inch monitors is not such that I can use them for reading text.
Well, I'm talking the insane curved, wide, triple wide.
The wide monitors are great right up until the moment that you need to stream stuff onto, say, twitch.tv, and that does a 1080p stream, and then you have some weird stretched out video. Anyway, so you're buying a monitor. You've committed.
I want a couple of good 1440p, 27-inch, just proper ass, 16:9
IPS. You're gonna go G-Sync?
Probably FreeSync. So I've now gone down the rabbit hole of. I've become well acquainted with TFT Central since we recorded.
Yeah. Who doesn't love TFT Central?
I've now been reading press releases issued by the manufacturers of LCD panels, not even the monitor makers. I mean, I'm talking Panda and AU Optronics, the kind of the biggest, the actual people who make the panels. So I've got my.
Do you think this is helping or making it worse? I'm asking for a friend.
I think it's better. I think I've got my eye on. So AU Optronics, I guess, is the biggest or one of the biggest makers of LCD panels.
Okay,
probably like the highest quality ones. They just announced, so a bit like genuinely the big development since we talked is that they seem to be going way harder into IPS finally. It's one of those check marks I was holding out for, right? Like I want IPS, I want high refresh, certain pixel densities, blah, blah, blah. But previously there were not a ton of high refresh IPS screens on the market, but finally we're seeing a bunch of that.
It seems something's definitely changed because like for a while, the only one you could get that was a 4K greater than 60 hertz IPS panel was that NVIDIA panel that's $2,000.
So LG is making some of their own. Panda, which is another manufacturer, is making a bunch that like Acer and Asus are using.
Okay.
But AU Optronics announced a nice line of like, I think it's 27-inch, 1440p. It's like high color accuracy, like 99% sRGB gamut.
HDR?
I think it might have some HDR, but like HDR and LCD PC monitors is a joke, right? Like it's not real, is my understanding. Like
Windows doesn't support that stuff very well, is my understanding.
Like Windows has bad support, and also my understanding is most of the monitors don't hit the brightness levels that you need for like actual spec HDR.
That would make sense.
So I don't.
The solution is just to get one of those LG OLEDs and put that on your wall above your computer, and then play games on that.
We'll get to that. I think I've cooled a lot on OLED too. But, one last thing I was going to ask about monitors. I'm probably overthinking this, but
no,
me overthink something.
I'm shocked. I can't imagine you would do that.
I'll probably be hooking consoles up to these monitors on occasion. Which will be feeding a 1080 signal into a 1440 screen. Is it rational at all to worry about scaling, or is that handled pretty well? Obviously, it's not one-to-one pixel scaling, so I just wondered if that would degrade the image very much, or if that's stupid to worry about.
So if you're piping it through a capture card, like for streaming or whatever, then that it'll get scaled up by the graphics card scaler, which is good.
Yeah, I would probably just split the HDMI and go straight into the second port on the monitor. I guess that just depends on how good the scaler is.
I was going to say it depends on how good the scalers are. I don't actually have a 1440p display. I have a 4K display, so it scales up. It scales up. 1080 to 1440 is just making every pixel 4 pixels, and it works out really nicely.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1080 to 4K is making every pixel 4 pixels.
That is a linear scale.
So it's there's no. So I think when you're looking at the monitor you buy, look at the reviews for the scaler.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people are going to do. I think that 1080 to 1440 thing is a thing that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So that it should be part of your review.
Yeah, I was just wondering how dire that situation is. I just decided that high refresh is more important than 4K to me right now, and there are like 3 4K high refresh monitors on the market, and they're all like $1,200. So.
Yeah, they start at $1,200 and go up to $2,000. The thing I would say is the other thing to consider is that with the consoles, the graphics are muddy enough now on consoles because a lot of them are doing like if you're playing. I can't remember what game it was, like Death Stranding or something. Since they announced the other day, it was Outer Worlds runs at 1440p internally on a PS4 Pro.
I saw that,
and they upscale it to 4K if you have a 4K set. So like you're already doing that upscaling. Like it's probably fine. That's the TLDR.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry
probably
about it.
Not worth worrying about. Okay.
Yeah, no. The other things, the refresh rate, having something that works with your video card right for the no latency / variable refresh rate stuff is the more important thing.
I just have kicked myself numerous times since we recorded this episode because I got to looking at monitors and realized that if I had decided like 3 or 4 years ago that I was okay with 27-inch, I could have bought a couple of cheapo 27-inch IPSs for like $250 each. And they probably would have paid for themselves within the electricity savings by now.
Oh, that's probably true because you have cold cathodes on your old monitors. Yeah,
it's vintage 2005 technology.
Yeah, I mean the good thing is having the opportunity to buy either G-Sync or NVIDIA compatible FreeSync that'll work with your video card, that'll work with your system that you have is going to be good in the long run.
That's actually, not to prattle about this forever, but that's another kind of development I've noticed since we recorded was that there are a lot more NVIDIA branded FreeSync monitors coming out, which are significantly cheaper than the G-Sync alternatives and almost as good.
We talked about this a little bit in the episode, I think. The G-Sync ones require special hardware.
Right. We got into the technical nuts and bolts of it, but it's more on the marketing side. Like NVIDIA, what I mean is NVIDIA is putting their stamp of approval on a lot more FreeSync monitors now. Like they're out of the box, they're coming with straight up NVIDIA stickers on them. So it's like you're getting most of the benefits of adaptive sync and their approval to use with their cards without that like insane, $200
$200. Yeah. Well, the thing that's happened is the high frame rate standards are moving closer to being part of the real standards that are actually in the market. So this is what always happens when NVIDIA does a proprietary thing early, is that for a while it's proprietary, and then the moment that as it inches closer to mainstream acceptance, they open up the proprietary stuff more and more as they get deeper in.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time to buy a monitor, it turns out.
Yeah, I'm very excited. That said, the first monitor using those new panels I've got my eye on aren't coming until January, so stay tuned.
There's still time for all sorts of new stuff to come out that will push that decision back even further, and you can stay on the 22-inchers.
Still time to change my mind. Speaking of holding off on making decisions.
Yeah. So you want to talk about the Samsung thing?
Yeah, so some stuff has been happening with micro LED in TVs all of a sudden. So I'm thinking maybe I'm not going to buy an OLED TV after all.
So we didn't even talk about this on the episode because I didn't think it was a thing that was potentially real for consumers. But Samsung and I think LG, I can't remember who the other vendor, but apparently there are multiple vendors making micro LED, modular micro LED panels. That are you've seen these before. People use them as customer facing installations in malls, and like they're basically, if you see a big video wall that's an arbitrary size and isn't shaped like a TV, it's usually these panels. So they're typically for installations. They've been in the past very expensive. They require a lot of like back panel wiring and weird power stuff and all that. And it seems like they're now releasing them. Samsung, at least, is going to release them in a way that's maybe not for like normal consumers next year or the year after, but it feels like the early days of OLED when we were looking at $10,000 OLED sets 5-6 years ago. Yeah.
So Samsung, I believe, is the one that announced a 75-inch consumer TV micro LED for this year. But yeah, I believe it is
still
that situation.
Modular though. Yeah.
Are you sure?
I believe so. Yeah, I think basically they're selling the panels, and you kind of connect them to each other in the shape that you want. Which most people, it's going to be a 16 by 9, 1080p or 4K set. The micro LED, just if you don't know what micro LED is, it's just very small LEDs. So instead of the pixels being either an organic light emitting diode in the case of OLEDs, or some backlit subpixels that are filtered out by a LCD screen, it's just lights. It's like a jumbotron for all intents and purposes in your living room.
My understanding is it's more or less the same tech as OLED. It's just that they don't use the organic compounds in the individual pixels.
Yeah, so there's less chance of burn-in. I think some pixels are bigger on micro LED than they are.
You might be right.
OLED.
I'm sure there are some fine distinctions, but I guess more from a practical consumer standpoint, the gist of micro LED is that it's basically all the advantages of OLED without really any of the drawbacks.
That's so that's always what happens when people come out with new technologies. They're like, well, this is just like the other thing, but it's better in some key way. And then like 5 years later, you find out that plasmas burn in just like everything else, or whatever the example is. Yeah,
that's kind of the opposite here, because the reason burn in happens on OLEDs is because those organic compounds break down relatively quickly with use.
Yeah.
And these don't use that type of material, so that's not going to be a problem. And the other thing is they're talking even the first gen models are going to have like 4 times the potential brightness of OLED.
Yeah, so that's the big benefit, is the brightness, and the black levels are still pure black. There's if it's black, there's nothing. Yeah.
Black levels and viewing angles and stuff like that. But anyway, I don't know how many. I just looked it up, by the way. It's next year. 2020 is when that 75-inch micro LED is shipping from Samsung.
And if you want,
it's probably going to be a while.
If you want an 8K, it's basically 200 inches or something. It's basically like the size of a wall.
Yeah.
Because you just add 4 times as many blocks basically to the thing.
I haven't been able to find if this TV they're talking about is going to be modular or not.
The thing I read implied that it is, but it's unclear.
I mean, if you're saying that consumer TVs, micro LED TVs, are going to have tiny seams where the individual panels are put together, that doesn't sound so appealing.
Well, no. So that's the point. The point is the modular designs are such that there are no seams. Like there's no bezel on them. So they're a little bit thicker than like an OLED TV, but they hook together in such a way that you can't. It's like when you see a big video wall.
There's no discernible line, but like
no discernible line.
You can Google like micro LED modular wall or something like that, and you can find videos, and it's a pretty cool tech demo of like you'll have like a giant sort of phone shaped vertical screen, and then they'll walk up and like attach another modular one to the side, and then the video just automatically appears on that extension. Like it's these weird L shaped screens and stuff that you can assemble and disassemble in real time. It's a cool effect.
I have so many questions about how the thing that drives the video in those screens is going to work.
Yeah.
It's like, can you imagine plugging in a PS5 into one of these things and it's like, oh, okay, your modular video wall is in this configuration. So we're going to make the game 16 by 9 vertically instead of 16 by 9 horizontally.
Right.
I mean, the nice thing is the modular video wall is actually the true solve for people shooting video vertically on their cell phones.
Great.
So you just need to have one that's vertical, and you make a plus. It's 2 16 by 9 pluses.
There you go. Yeah.
And you have one for vertical video, and one for horizontal video, like decent people shoot.
Yeah, like it's crazy. If you look at these tech demos, like you essentially have screens that are the shape of Tetris pieces. I mean, just like weird appendages sticking out the sides and stuff. It's kind of fascinating. I just remembered the one other thing, and again, this is Samsung touting this. Like we'll see how it pans out. But they say that micro LED is so low energy consumption that it's practical to just leave your TV on all the time.
They always say that, man. They said that about plasmas, and we all know the truth there.
They're citing like what was the figure? Like the lifetime operational rating of like I think it was basically 11 years of constant 24/7 use before they.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's like 100,000 hours or something like that. Like they are literally saying that the potential for burn-in is non-existent and the power consumption is low enough that you could use your TV as a video window, like physical window in your house, like display landscapes or something when you're not using it.
I mean, man, that seems just unbelievably wasteful, but okay. I mean, let her rip, man.
you're having to take the manufacturer at their word on this, but it's I don't know. I feel like these claims are so outlandish that they couldn't possibly be lying about them.
Throw your OLED in the trash. Get this new thing. It's much better.
Actually, I think I've reversed course. In the course of this conversation, I've thought, maybe I will buy a cheap OLED in the interim.
Yeah, I like
if we're not getting the first set until next year. I mean, we're talking probably 5 years before they're really affordable.
I think 2025 before you're looking at like a $2,000 4K set would be my bet.
Okay, then yeah. Maybe I'll get another TV in the interim.
Yeah, I mean the thing is the OLEDs are going to be even cheaper. So
yeah,
like
they're getting there.
Yeah, and it's a lot of this is this a good enough situation, or is this a like the OLED is I recorded a podcast at Tested yesterday, and they have an OLED behind their set, and man, that thing is just gorgeous. It looks so good, even when you're just showing like wallpaper on it. So
sure does.
So yeah, get an OLED in the meantime. This is the TV after that TV.
Oh, great! Now I'm buying monitors and a TV.
Well, it's time, Brad. It's time.
I guess.
Should we do an email? You want to
sure.
dig into the emails?
Yeah.
If people want to send us an email, they can write to us at techpod@content.town, or you can hit us on Twitter too.
Content Town.
Content Town. It's where you go. It's where the kids go for all the good content. Paul Emanuel was listening to the battery episode and said, "Hey, I'm catching up on episodes and enjoyed the one on batteries. I was wondering what you knew about batteries for storing excess energy generated by solar panels. We have a 3 kilowatt system and end up selling lots of that back to the grid at a very poor return, about 20% of what you pay if you're buying the electricity. I'd like to store the energy I generate to use, but assume the cost of the batteries are going to drop drastically over the next 5 or so years thanks to electric car developments. Thanks, Paul." Yeah, so in an ideal situation, if you have solar, this is something we've done a lot of research on because we've got to do a new roof next year. And when we do the new roof, we're putting solar on because you do them both at the same time so that the solar people can't destroy the roof and the roof people don't destroy the solar. And there's no like he said, she said situation. We're lucky enough to live in California where they have to pay market rate for energy they buy from you based on the time it's generated. So energy in California at 3:00 in the afternoon when solar is going to peak is way more expensive than it is at midnight when you're going to use it. So it makes sense to sell it to the utility at the high rate during the daytime and buy it back from them at night when the sun's down. So batteries don't make financial sense. If you're only getting 20% of what the rate is, it might make more sense for you. My understanding is that even small battery installations start at $5,000 or $10,000. So you have to amortize that out over it should be an easy thing to spreadsheet. You think about how long you're going to live in the house. You think about how long it's going to cost. You think about the batteries. You look at the number of the charge cycles that the batteries have, and then math that out and see what your savings is versus selling back to the grid at the 20% rate.
What kind of capacity are we talking about? I mean, how much excess can you store in a situation like that?
I'm looking up the Powerwalls right now. I think the Powerwalls that Tesla makes are 10,000 kilowatt hours. No, that's not right. 10 kilowatt hours, maybe.
That sounds like a lot.
I mean, it's bigger than your phone. The other thing that I think is going to happen, Powerwall, Tesla recommends 2 Powerwalls, of course. It does not say how big the Powerwalls are, of course. The upshot is so there's 2 other things to consider. One is that power storage that is not batteries is going to come online, I think, in the next few years, where people use like compressed air, or if you have, for example, one of the things that they do in Switzerland to store solar energy during the daytime is they have 2 lakes at higher altitude. One is at high altitude, one's at low altitude.
Basically store kinetic energy.
Yeah, so you pump the water up using the solar energy during the day, and then you run it down at night to hydro. That's a pretty easy thing to do, and maybe more effective than solar even in your neck of the woods. So 30 kilowatt hours per day. They say that 2 Powerwalls will leave you self-powered.
That's okay.
At Tesla.
Reasonable. Wait, hang on. You mean? But I've been told that when the wind stops blowing, you can't watch TV anymore. What's up with that?
Look, you should not vote for Republicans. That's the answer to that question. So the idea is that it charges during the day and then you trickle out at night. The other benefit of doing a battery solution is that most places, if you have a power outage, for example, when the power was turned off in California last week because it was windy, if you have solar, most of the solar turns off automatically unless you have certain stuff inside the house to regulate the power generation, because they don't want solar pumping back into the lines that line people are working on and could electrocute them.
Okay.
So you don't. It's important that your solar turns off when the power goes out, which makes no sense in some ways, because you don't want to backfeed into the lines and risk hurting people.
Is there no way to, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of quarantine the power that you're generating to the circuits in your house and not keep it from getting out onto the grid?
Yeah, there absolutely is. It ends up working the same way that like if you have a home fallover generator for when the power goes out or something, it works the same way as that, basically.
Okay. Well, I would like to think we're not about to live in a world where, public utilities aren't routinely going offline for no good reason and that you have to worry about this stuff, but I guess it's good to have options.
Hey, Brad, I got bad news for you. We already live in the world where where one of the biggest public utilities in the country hasn't spent money on maintenance for the last 20 years. And
there's still time to fix this, right?
Yeah, there's probably time to fix this. Just, get a boat just in case.
Okay. Great. Great. On that cheery note.
Yeah, I think that's as good a place as any to wrap it up.
Yay.
Yeah. Oh, I actually have one more email. Surya said on episode 3, Brad mentioned that he had a bunch of headless Raspberry Pis plugged into his network. Yeah. As someone living the stereotypical story of having a bunch of Raspberry Pis laying around collecting dust, I was wondering, what do you guys use your Raspberry Pis for?
So I aborted that project. What I was attempting to do is, so I have a FreeNAS machine. I've had a couple of scares where like the boot media died on it at one point. Mm-hmm. Some other weird stuff where, one NAS is not enough, right? Like,
that is patently untrue.
Vinny warned me about this when I built the FreeNAS machine. He said, okay, now you've got a backup. Now very soon you're going to want a backup for your backup. And then at some point I started figuring like, okay, maybe I need 2 local backups and then I'll also back up to the cloud, and you just can't have enough backups. But anyway.
Oh, no.
I bought a couple of, I don't know if you saw, and they might still be on sale. The Western Digital has the portable hard drive line. I think it's the Elements series. The Elements, I think, is the one that gets up into really big sizes. Like I bought a couple of 10 terabyte, 2 10 terabyte drives.
Wow.
Basically enough to back up my whole NAS.
Okay.
So what I was trying to do was I was tinkering with installing FreeBSD on one of those Pis and hooking those drives up to that and using that as a network replication target.
Oh.
Either for rsync or I was looking into using, I don't know how familiar you are with ZFS is the file system that FreeNAS uses.
Yeah, so you can just replicate it.
Yeah, it has native built-in snapshot and replication tools.
Yeah.
So I was looking into, and this is super paranoid, but I just wanted that backup in a different physical part of the house from the primary NAS.
Okay. In case the guinea pigs chew cables.
Yes, or in case there's a fire or a flood or whatever.
I was going to say, you can just install Linux on those because you can put ZFS on Linux and it'll work.
Yeah, so I came to that late. It looks like ZFS on Linux is getting very mature now.
It's usable now, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's totally usable. I tried to format those drives ext4 in a striped RAID configuration on Raspbian, which is the Linux that runs on Raspberry Pi. But all Pis there's only a 32-bit kernel that runs on Raspberry Pis at the moment, at least that's like well supported, and you can't partition the full 20 terabytes of space with the 32-bit kernel.
Of course, yeah.
So that's why I started trying to do FreeBSD, except that FreeBSD on ARM is currently kind of messy and not well supported either. So I think I'm just going to hook those USB drives straight up to the NAS and back up locally and forget all this nonsense.
Well, I mean, the thing you could do is back them up locally and just plug them in once a month and do the replication task and then put them in a fire safe or something.
I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to have them back up every couple weeks and then stick them in the closet.
That's what I do. I was going to say the other problem with the Raspberry Pi is I bet they don't have enough RAM to run ZFS at that scale.
That is the other thing that I came to. Well, so I was also trying to do it on an old Pi that's USB 2 and only has 100 megabit LAN.
Yeah,
which is going to be a nightmare for keeping terabytes of data in sync. The new Pi 4s are pretty nice. Like they've got 4 gig I think is the max amount of RAM.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And they're USB 3 and gigabit LAN, so I might try to get a hold of one of those and give it another shot. But I think I'm just gonna do the local backup and stop being a crazy person.
So I have a couple of Pis. One is hooked up to a 3D printer and it runs a piece of software called Octoprint that basically is like a headless print server for 3D printers. So you send it your G-code files and it just turns on the printer and goes, which is awesome. And you can hook up a little camera to it so you can watch the print happening. It's a really lovely piece of software. The other one used to be for playing old console games on my living room TV, and then I hacked a NES Classic, and I don't do that anymore because the NES Classic looks nicer. So
yeah, everybody's got to do that once and then realize that it's kind of pointless.
It's not a great solution. I feel like that Pi 4 might actually make it a good solution.
Yeah,
because it seems like the hardware is a lot better. But
yes, that's one of the reasons I want one of those. But I was going to say generally, just if you've got an old Pi lying around and you want something to do with it, I would recommend just browsing around for different open source projects you can run on there. Because like you said, like you can put like print servers, music servers. There's stuff like Homebridge that lets you add HomeKit support to home automated devices that don't support iOS.
Yeah.
Tons of stuff. Like there's just like endless little one-off homebrew projects that like one or two people develop and host on GitHub, and you can really like put those things into service and do all kinds of cool stuff.
I assume there's probably like a Raspberry Pi community site that lists all of these things and talks about them, but I've never seen it before. So maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe this is a niche somebody could fill. But
well, the nice thing about those things running Linux is you don't even really need that. You know, like in most cases, in a lot of cases, a lot of the stuff that's developed for just like x86 proper Linux will also build on a Pi pretty easily.
Well, that's true. Or
there are binaries. There are already precompiled binaries for a lot of that stuff.
Well, I was going to say trying something new on a Raspberry Pi is usually as simple as buying like a 32 gig SD card, copying an ISO over to it, and plugging it into the Pi and trying out whatever the other thing you want to do is. So
it's super easy to just wipe it and start over if you screw things up or you're
there's also a whole other world of those microcontrollers that are really interesting. Like the Teensies, you can do all sorts of cool stuff with them.
Yeah.
The Raspberry Pi is the one that I think gets probably the most third-party support at this point. But even all the way down to like those Intel USB stick PCs that are like $99 and are basically like an x86 Atom processor or a Pentium processor jammed on a thing that's like the size of a thumb drive. I was going to say, Brad, on the FreeNAS beat, you should replace your USB thumb drives with a cheap SSD. You can get like, I did that because my USB thumb drives kept dying.
Yeah,
and
I'm having the
SSD, I got like a $30 128 gig SSD, and it's worked flawlessly.
Like I bought a couple of nice, nice, you know, they're like $12, but a couple of Samsung, like fairly high-end USB thumb drives to replace the ones that died like 3 months ago. And I've already started getting read-write errors on those. Are those things just like too cheap and unreliable for the purpose that we're trying to use them for?
I think so. Like I at one point had a ZFS array of USB thumb drives to boot, because FreeNAS, you boot off the USB thumb drive,
right?
For people who don't know. I don't think they're not built for that kind of use cycle.
Yeah, I think
is my guess.
I think it just burns them out way too fast.
There's an SSD recommendation. I'll send it to you and I'll post in the show notes for people at home.
The only problem there is that then you're eating up SATA channels that you would ideally like to use for more large drives.
Well, so I think that there's the one that they recommend is actually a USB device that plugs into the USB header on the motherboard.
Oh, interesting.
I'll look and see.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that.
I'll dig up I bought one on Amazon. I'll figure out what it is. It's been working well for me so far.
Okay, cool.
So I guess that's it for us.
Okay.
Unless you have anything else.
No.
Tech.
Probably rambled enough about stuff for 1 week.
Brad, we made a tech pod.
As always, I'm incredibly flattered that anybody wants to listen to all of these aimless ramblings.
It's been really fun. It's like usually you don't get to dig deep in stuff, so I really enjoy it. Yeah. I think the format is good. We'd love to hear what you think, though. iTunes reviews are always welcome, positive or negative. We're just reviews are nice.
Yeah, actually, the number one thing I would love to hear from people is just topic suggestions.
We're getting a lot of them. I don't know if we're getting them on Twitter.
Okay.
People have emailed in quite a few good ones. I've been adding them to the list as we get going.
Yeah.
My favorite one, oh God, can I remember what it was now? I don't think I can. I'm not going to say it so that we don't have to do it if we don't want to. But yeah, we've had a lot of good topic suggestions. We've had a lot of good feedback, and would love to hear what you think about this. The very first episode we recorded, I think, on a Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm Will Smith on Twitter if you want to reach me.
Yes, I am Brad Shoemaker.
We will see you all next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.